Are you sure? Thank you. Are you sure, Shannon, that that's okay to record?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, perfect. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Excited for this update from Shannon Vandrell, the Global ALagille Alliance, the Gala Study. She's going to tell us all about it, give us some super exciting updates. And Shannon has said as she goes through the presentation, if we have questions along the way, welcome to just raise your hand or type them in the chat, and we'll stop and take questions along the way. All right, Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Perfect, thank you. I first off just like to thank Roberta and Cher for the opportunity to present today. We have lots of exciting updates. So my name is Shannon Vandrell. I am a research program manager at the Hospital for Sick Children, and I work with Dr. Vinita Kamath, and I am the project manager for the Gala Study. So my presentation today is entitled The Global ALagille Alliance Gala Study, 1,600 children with Alagille syndrome and counting. Some of you might be familiar with the Gala Study, others of you might not have heard about it before. And so today we're going to share some background information as well as some recent data that we've presented at some conferences. And I have no financial conflicts of interest to disclose. So in Alagille syndrome research, as with many rare disease research, there are many challenges that we face. So one of them is there are limited funding opportunities. There's just not as many research grants directed towards rare disease research. Another issue that we face is small sample sizes or research that's coming out of single institutions. And so it's only reporting on a small number of individuals. Another issue that we face is ascertainment biases. And so this means some of the work that we've seen is coming out of high volume referral centers. And so this typically represents the most severely affected Alagille syndrome patients, and therefore the findings might not be generalizable to other children who have more of a milder disease course. Another challenge that we face is multi-system disease involvement. So as many of you know, Alagille syndrome manifests in many different ways, and even among families, we'll see different presentation or organ involvement. And so to overcome all of these challenges, in 2018, we established the Global ALagille Alliance Gala Study Group. So the aims of the Gala, so what is the Gala Study? So the Gala Study is a global initiative to create an international research database of clinical, genetic, and laboratory data in children with Alagille syndrome. And so this study really set out to get a real world perspective of Alagille syndrome and learn more about the natural history as well as long-term outcomes. Furthermore, we really wanted to understand Alagille syndrome beyond the liver, and so looking more into heart, kidney, and vascular involvement. And so this study was initiated by Dr. Vinita Kamath, and she is the principal investigator, and it was launched at the Hospital for Sick Children and the University of Toronto. So some of our aims for the Gala study were we wanted to conduct a comprehensive analysis of an international cohort of patients with Alagille syndrome to really characterize the natural history and long-term outcomes in a real world cohort. We also wanted to learn more about biopsy findings, as well as the frequency and spectrum of extrahepatic involvement, as well as we also wanted to develop an Alagille syndrome specific growth curve. So how do you establish a research database? And so I'm going to walk you through kind of our journey of the Gala study and kind of the 5 steps that we've taken to get to 1,600 children with Alagille syndrome. So we started off, step 1 is developing partnerships, which I'll go into a little bit more detail shortly. Our next step was designing the study and executing it, followed by data collection and identifying sites who'd like to participate in our study. Then we did data analysis as well as data cleaning. And now we're at the most exciting stage of our study, which is knowledge translation, which I'll get to share some findings today. So first, we're going to start off with our partnerships. So the Gala Study Group has been incredibly fortunate to partner with some amazing organizations and individuals, one of them being the Alagille Syndrome Alliance, who have been with us on our journey since day one. So Roberta and Cher have been really integral roles in the success of the Gala study. And early on in the study, they would meet with us and we discuss the study documents and make sure that we're really answering questions that matter most to patients and their families. And so the Alliance has really brought the patient voice to the forefront of our research. So we're incredibly lucky to have Roberta and Cher involved. We also, in recent years, have partnered with Mirum Pharmaceuticals and Albareo, and they have supported us and allowed us to expand our study to bigger than we could have ever imagined, and also to grow our research team so that we can bring on more sites and also analyze more data. So through their partnership, we're going to be able to really establish this real world cohort of children with Alagille syndrome. And the data and what we learned from the Gala study, that will translate into how we design future clinical trials, as well as identifying appropriate study endpoints for clinical trials. We also partnered with experts within the Alagille syndrome community to make sure that we were designing our study appropriately, asking the questions that we needed to ask. And so this study is led by Dr. Benita Kamath. We also have Dr. Bettina Hansen, who is a world-renowned statistician and helps us with all our data analysis. Dr. Manuel Gonzalez, who is a pediatric hepatologist from Bicêtre in Paris. As many of you know, Dr. David Piccoli from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We also have Dr. Richard Thompson from King's College in London, who is a geneticist expert. We have Dr. Henk-Jan Barkey, who is from the University of Groningen and has done some incredible work in PFIC through the NAPID study group. And then we also have Dr. Jishen Wang, who is from the Children's Hospital of Fudan University, and his center has actually contributed the largest number of Alagille syndrome patients, about 200 individuals, which is incredible. So through these partnerships, they've been really the core and a real reason why we have been so successful in our study. So after we have established our partnership, the next was designing our study and to start data collection. So for our study, it's a retrospective medical chart review of Alagille syndrome patients with a clinically and or genetically confirmed diagnosis who were born between January 1997 and April 2018. We also had genetically confirmed Alagille syndrome patients who were born before January 1997 who are also eligible for the study. And below is just a table summarizing how we identified patients to make sure they're eligible. So how does the study work? So once a prospective site has agreed to be involved in the study, through their institution, they'll apply for research ethics board approval and will submit appropriate legal documents. The participating center will then review the medical records of the Alagille syndrome patients who are followed at their center, and clinical information is then entered into our secure research database only by authorized users. The database is then managed by the Data Coordinating Center at the Hospital for Sick Children, and we review all the data, we clean it up, and then we analyze all the pooled data together. And from there, we start preparing scientific material for dissemination as well as research publications. So what type of data does the Gala study collect? So we tried to go as comprehensive as we could to make sure that we're really getting the liver phenotype, kidney phenotype, cardiac involvement, and so forth. So we collect liver biopsies, we collect details about transplantation, biliary diversion, cardiac involvement. We actually collect the echocardiogram reports, whether children have undergone any surgeries or interventions for their cardiac disease. We also look at kidney biopsies and the spectrum of kidney involvement. We look at vascular involvement, specifically head MRI and CT reports, as well as abdominal MRI and CT reports. And we also collect data over time. So we look at growth parameters as well as biochemical or laboratory data over time. And we also collect some data on pregnancy in individuals with Alagille syndrome. So at the Data Coordinating Center, which is at the Hospital for Sick Children, myself, as well as my two colleagues, Ali and Michaela, we oversee the database and all the data that's brought in. We also train sites who are interested in participating to make sure they're comfortable in entering the data into the database. And we do all the cleaning and so forth before we start data analyses. So one key thing that we always like to share is Alagille syndrome, the Gala study is a research database. So it's very different than a patient registry. So with the Gala research database, it differs from a traditional patient registry in that only approved and verified sites may submit their patient data. The reason why we do this is to ensure data integrity and lawful transfer of patient data. So unfortunately, we're not able to accept medical records at the Data Coordinating Center, or if you sent it in, it all has to be done through your child's institution. So the Gala study since 2018 has grown bigger than we could have ever imagined. And we now have more than 89 participating centers in 35 countries around the world, which is truly incredible. We have sites in South Africa, we have sites in Korea, we have sites in Japan, Argentina. It's truly incredible on the interest to be involved in this study and the willingness for investigators to dedicate their time to contribute data. And as of July, the Gala database now houses data on more than 1,600 children with Alagille syndrome, which is truly incredible and something we're very proud of. And the questions that we'll be able to answer with this data are endless. So it's a really exciting time for the Gala Study group. So once with data collection, still ongoing, but now we've started really looking at data analyses. And so the next couple slides I'm going to share with you are from a couple of recent conferences that we presented at. So one question that we wanted to answer with the Gala study was looking at transplant-free survival rates as well as overall survival rates in children with Alagille syndrome. So I'm just getting at my pointer and I will walk you through what this graph is. So this is a graph looking at transplant-free survival in Alagille syndrome patients who presented with neonatal cholestasis. So on our y-axis right here, we have the percentages. And so at time point, and then on our x-axis, we have the follow-up duration. So at time point 0, we start at 100%, so everyone has their native liver. And then over time, that number can go down depending on your child's liver disease course. And so we have found that in children who present with neonatal cholestasis, about only 41% reach adulthood with their native liver. We also look at overall survival rates in children with Alagille syndrome, and Dr. Kamath was talking about this in the last session. And so again, on our y-axis, we have the percent, and then on the bottom, on the x-axis, we have follow-up in years. And so in 1,154 children with Alagille syndrome, we found that overall survival rates were excellent. So by the age of 18, it's 89%, which is really incredible and a nice update to the literature. We also looked, one of the things as researchers, we're always looking at whether we can predict outcomes. Oh, sorry, I see there's a question. So Stephanie, the question was, how can we make sure our child's information has been sent to the Gala study? So for that one, it's truly talking to your child's medical team and making sure that they're involved. We have extensive involvement in North America, as well as across Europe. And so maybe at the end of the session, if you want to maybe mention where your child's followed privately, I'd be happy to let you know if that center is involved in the Gala study. So one of the things as researchers that we're always interested in is whether we can predict outcomes. And so one of the things that we've been able to do with the Gala study, given the number of patients that we have, is looking at whether there is a relationship between the type of gene that you have and your clinical course to see if there's a way that we can predict. So one of the ways that we look at that is looking at genotype phenotype correlations. So we looked at JAG1 patients. And in one of our recent abstract presentations, we stratified children who had a JAG1 variant into 3 different groups to see if there was any differences on the type of JAG1 variant that they have and their long-term outcomes. So we had 3 groups. So one of them is looking at truncating JAG1 variants. The second group was looking at non-truncating JAG1 variants. And the third group was looking at structural variants. So we found when looking at liver disease involvement between these 3 groups, we found that JAG1 Alagille syndrome patients were clinically indistinguishable in terms of hepatic involvement. So that includes a history of neonatal cholestasis, as well as just any liver involvement at any age. So we didn't find that there was any differences in children with a certain type of JAG1 variant and their clinical features. We also looked at transplant-free survival rates among Alagille syndrome patients who had a JAG1 variant, again, looking at those 3 groups. So with this graph, the blue group is non-truncating variants, the red group is truncating, and the green group is structural. So we found that regardless of the type of JAG1 variant that your child has, there are no differences in long-term outcomes when it comes to transplant-free survival. We also looked at children with a Notch2 variant. So there's still, there hasn't been that many cases of Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients in the literature. And again, another amazing thing about the Gala study is we've now ascertained the largest cohort of Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients to date. And so one of the questions that we wanted to know is, what do Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients look like in comparison to Jag1 Alagille syndrome patients? So in the Gala cohort, we had 21 children with a Notch2 variant, and we compared those children to 824 Alagille syndrome patients with a Jag1 variant. And so we found that, again, when looking at hepatic involvement, that Jag1 and Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients were similar in terms of hepatic involvement. The only difference that we found, and again, this is statistically speaking, was that Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients were significantly more likely to be male than Jag1 Alagille syndrome patients. But in terms of the presentation of neonatal cholestasis or having bowel duct paucity on native liver biopsy, we didn't find any differences between the groups. We also looked at extrahepatic involvement between Jag1 and Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients. And we found that Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients were significantly less likely to have characteristic facies, an echo-confirmed cardiac anomaly, a butterfly vertebra, or posterior embryotoxin. So overall, we found that extrahepatic manifestations were less frequent in Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients, but they had comparable liver disease. So this is another graph looking at transplant-free survival rates. And so this is comparing Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients versus Jag1 Alagille syndrome patients to see if there's any differences in transplant-free survival. And so we found that transplant-free survival rates were very comparable, and there were no significant differences. So if you have a Notch2 variant or a Jag1 variant, your liver disease course seems to be comparable. We also looked at overall survival rates, again, comparing Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients to Jag1 Alagille syndrome patients. And again, we found overall survival rates are excellent and that they are comparable based on your child's genetic mutation. So what have we learned from the Gala study? So we have found that the burden of liver disease is greater than we initially appreciated, and that about 41% of children will reach adulthood with their native liver. We also found that overall mortality rates were incredibly low. And so this underscores the importance of adult physicians being aware of Alagille syndrome patients and the needs of these individuals as they graduate pediatric care and go on to adult care. We also found that Jag1 and Notch2 Alagille syndrome patients have similar liver disease and survival outcomes, but we do see a difference in phenotype in terms of extrahepatic manifestations. And one of the goals of the Gala study really is we're building on Daniel Allagille's legacy. For hepatologists and gastroenterologists is really thinking beyond the liver. And so the Gala study is robust and a rich database that will allow us to really understand the extrahepatic involvement of Alagille syndrome patients. And this will allow us to coordinate with subspecialties to ensure optimal care for patients and provide evidence-based holistic care. So now that we have our data analyses, the next we're going to talk a little bit more about knowledge translation. So in summary, we have ascertained the largest real-world cohort of Alagille syndrome patients to date. We have this rich and robust database, and we're going to be able to really understand Alagille syndrome beyond the liver and gain a better understanding of some of the extrahepatic involvement. Also doing more in-depth analysis into genetic variants and whether they can have a role in predicting outcome. And following the success of 7 Congress abstracts, we're now just about to submit our first manuscript, which is incredibly exciting. And we also wanted to highlight that, in trying to really look beyond the liver, one of the arms of the Gala study is looking at doing a deeper dive into cardiac involvement. And so we're currently collaborating with Stanford University, led by Dr. Jeff Feinstein, who spoke yesterday, and really harnessing the expertise of other subspecialties to ensure that we truly understand Alagille syndrome. And so through this, we'll be able to do an in-depth analysis of Alagille-related cardiac involvement. And the Gala Study database now has over 1,000 echoes and data on more than 300 cardiac procedures. And so through this data, we'll be able to really understand the spectrum and severity of cardiac disease in Alagille syndrome patients. And I would just like to acknowledge my PI, Dr. Benita Kamath, as well as all our investigators and their research teams who are involved in the Gala study. The success of our study would not be possible without each and every one of them. And I'd also like to again thank our partners, the Allergy Syndrome Alliance, Mirum Pharmaceuticals, and Albareo Pharma for their support. It's been truly incredible. And I just want to see if anyone had any questions.
Thank you so much, Shannon. We did have a question that came in yesterday when we were with Dr. Looms talking about nutrition. We were wondering if, are there any dietary elements that you look at in the Gala study? So we were talking about different diets, like Mediterranean diet versus this versus that. Is that, do you guys look at that at all as far as diets?
Unfortunately, no, that's not a data point that we collect in the Gala study. We are looking at growth trajectories though, and we are in the process of developing an Alagille syndrome specific growth curve with all the growth data that we've received. And so that's something over the next year we're going to really be focusing on and to keep an eye out for.
Okay. That was another question that came up, are the growth charts and where, you know, that's something that everyone's really looking forward to, those updated ones. And you feel like the timeline on that is within the next year, maybe?
Yeah, I would say within about a year's time.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, looks like a couple of questions have come through. Jen, do you want to ask your question? Hi.
Hello. I was just curious for the extrahepatic Notch 2 versus JAG1 ALGS patients, if you recall if there were any findings for the kidney.
There were no significant differences in kidney involvement between the two groups or vascular.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hannah has two questions, and then Duke.
Hannah, did you want to ask your question, or I can read it out in the chat? Maybe I'll read it out in the chat. So Hannah's question was data collection for the 1,600 plus Alagille syndrome, or 1,600 plus patients isolated to only Alagille syndrome diagnosis, medically speaking. So yes, every individual captured within the Gala database had to have either a clinically and or genetically confirmed diagnosis of Alagille syndrome. So typically for clinical diagnosis, you need at least 3 characteristic features. And then for genetic diagnosis, either a pathogenic JAG1 or Notch 2 variant, in addition to some clinical features. And is there her second question was, is there a timeline for the vascular data interpretation? Unfortunately, I can't, I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. So that's definitely on our to-do list. And with the number of reports that we've gotten in, we are going to be doing a deeper dive into vascular involvement, but I'm not able to provide a timeline at this time. And I see there's another question in the chat. Tara, did you want to read that out, or I can? Maybe I'll do this one. So in the chat, Tara had asked what % of the enrolled cases are adults. So approximately, so we do have some patients that reach adulthood who were initially enrolled in as a child in Allergy, and then we have follow-up data on them beyond 18. But I would say only less than 1%. Most of our data is within pediatric patients.
Okay, Duke, you want to go ahead?
All right. I was wondering, is there any plans for Gala to expand and maybe consider sample collections just to kind of allow researchers to have access to patient samples? Because you can tell now people are working with patient cells, having that kind of data connected with like patient cells would allow us a lot more resources to test potential therapies and mechanisms, so on.
Of course, no, that's a really great question. Unfortunately, at this point in time, I don't think that's something that we'll be doing. That would change the study of design from a retrospective study to a prospective study. And there's a lot of legal barriers for transfer of data, as well as ethical issues. There's consenting issues, and the manpower and financial component of that would be significant. So at this point in time, we are just focusing on a clinical study.
Are there any resources available? Stacy, you just popped up, but
I did. Well, I just wanted to comment because I want to applaud Cher and Roberta. So I guess it was 2 years ago, Cher, that you had put in an application to try to get some, so we could get a biobank started. And we had worked here at Cincinnati Children's to get, unfortunately it wasn't funded, but we're still always looking for those things to help get it, because it's really expensive to maintain a biobank. And as Shannon pointed out, with the patient consents and everything that happens from around the world, which we want to have all of that information from patients, but we're trying.
I was wondering, I mean, even if we don't have a biobank, it would be great if when you're doing your data collection to get maybe just acknowledgements from different individuals, whether they're even interested in making their samples available. That might just at least give us a a direction to go towards in terms of who might be willing to share their samples.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Shannon, thank you again so much for sharing these updates. So exciting, 1,600, that's a fantastic number. So excited about that. So thank you so much. Let's see, let me make sure. Okay, we are going to wrap this up, and the next presentation will start in just a couple of minutes. That will be Alboreo Pharma, and if you just X out of this, go back into the auditorium and launch the next session. So thank you again, Shannon. All right, bye everyone.